episode 7. Okay, so we'll just continue from where we stopped.
Okay, Danish Deception Part 7. So he tells me that he needs to get a back surgery and he does not want me to come to Denmark because he wants me to meet his parents with him there because there's a serious language barrier and he wants to make sure that I can communicate with them through him. And he's like, I don't want you to be using Google Translate to talk to them the first time you meet them. And yeah, and at first I was really upset because I felt like he wasn't treating me like I was his family. And I remember having a conversation with my mom about it because I was really frustrated. And she asked me, she said, do you think his parents know about you? And I remember I got really defensive because I told her, in what world would his parents not know about me? And I told him, I really want to be there. I was still kind of like pushing on him for like the full day. And I remember like that was like one of our fight in the last 4 months because it's December of 2022. And so I told him, I said, listen, I really want to be there for you. And he was like, honestly, I don't want to like fight about this anymore. Like, let's just put this to rest. And I remember being frustrated because I also didn't have plans for Christmas because my family was going to be traveling. And I had planned to spend Christmas with him. So I remember I reached out to my best friend Natalie. I was talking to her about the situation. She said, why don't you fly to New York, spend a couple days with me, and then we'll go spend Christmas in Boston with my family. And I said, okay, like we can do that. And so I brought up the option to my ex. He said, I think that's a great idea. I obviously don't want you to spend Christmas by yourself. And so I said, okay, that works. And I'm obviously extremely sad because at this point I hadn't seen him in weeks. And now I don't know when I'm going to see him again because he's getting this surgery on December 21st. So I made plans, booked my flight to New York, and a couple of days before I leave, he told me, maybe what we can do is you can come to Denmark maybe a couple days after my back surgery because the doctors say that I need to be up walking a couple days afterwards, and I think it's just my mom that's going to come. So what we can do is you can come meet my mom and we can go see like the Christmas lights, and at that point I'll be able to translate and everything. And so I said, that's fine. So I was like, I'll fly to New York, go to Boston, spend Christmas with my friend Natalie, and then I'll also have like an extra bag packed for like things to wear in Copenhagen and just make sure I'm prepared to figure out what the plan is whenever he tells me. And so I think we had decided that it was December like 26th or 27th that I was going to go to Copenhagen and then spend like a week there. So I go to New York, have a great couple days with my friend Natalie. And on like the second day I'm in New York, I get a message from him and he said, oh my goodness, my dad's back in the hospital. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry to hear that. He's like, his infection numbers are bad again, his blood poisoning again. And he ended up getting diagnosed with leukemia. And I just, I wanted to be there for him. And I said, like, do you want me to come? Like, I want to be there for you. Like, I don't want you to feel like you have to navigate through these things without having like your partner there to support you. And he said, right now, I just need to like focus on my family, and I'm grateful for you to be here, but I also don't want you to meet my dad for the first time in a hospital bed. And I'm obviously frustrated because I really want to be there for him, but I also don't want to be too pushy because I'm like, this is your family, your dad's in the hospital. I don't want to put too much on him. And so we made the decision that I was just going to be kind of like on standby, which was fine because I was with my best friend Natalie and I love her so much. And so I was having honestly a wonderful time with her and her family. And so we had left New York, went to Boston. Obviously, we're sitting in the hospital room, and my dad is obviously laying in the bed, and my older sister, he storms out. He feels so disrespected. His mom's upset. His little sister's upset because they're already spending some of their holidays in the hospital, and like now like they have all this tension in the family. And so I remember just being like so confused as to like why his sister is like this awful person. Like, why is she treating you like this, especially at a time when your dad is not doing okay? And so he calls me. He's like, I'm just so upset. Like, I want to get away. And I said, well, let me know what you need from me. Like, I'm literally a plane ride away. And he said, well, I obviously, like, now that I'm like don't want to be around my family, I would love to see you. And I said, okay, well, I can book a flight to Copenhagen and come stay with you. And he said, I don't know, I just kind of feel like I just need to get out of Denmark. And At that point, he was obviously in his hometown in Aalborg, which is 4 hours north of Copenhagen. And so he took a train back to Copenhagen. He's spending Christmas completely by himself, so sad. And we're still trying to iron out what the say we were having like financial issues, but I knew like obviously there was like a little bit of tension with like all of his expenses that were adding up. And so I was like, it might be easier for me to just fly there and I can just stay with you. And he's like, I just really want to get away. And I said, okay, where do you want to go? He said, have you been to Paris before? And I said, no, I actually have not been to Paris. And he's like, well, let's do Paris. And I said, okay, I'm absolutely down to do Paris. And so I look at flights. I book a flight from Boston to Paris, the layover in Iceland, and I leave on the 26th, and I get to Paris on the 27th, and I see him. He meets me at the airport. We arranged our flights to make sure we landed around the same time. And something I need to add is before I had gone to Paris, he had told me that he had made a transfer from his business account to his personal account. And obviously in the States, when you make a transfer like that, it's just like a click of a button. Like I have a business account, it's a click of a button. But he told me that in Denmark, when you make a transfer from your business account to your personal account, it actually has to go through the IRS. They take out the taxes and then they deposit the money into your personal account. And I'm over here thinking like that's so crazy. But I also know like Denmark is a foreign country that I don't know anything about. I didn't question it for a second. And so he said, I'm just gonna ask my mom to give me a quick little loan so I can obviously cover everything with Paris and whatnot. And I said, okay, just let me know what she says. And then he basically came back to me and said, she said that she will only give me the money if I spend a couple more days with the family. I said, well, you should do that. Like, I don't want you to feel like I'm trying to take you away from your family by any means. And he said, I don't even want to be around them right now. It's just like not good for my mental health. And then I said, okay, well, what do you need from me? I said, I can cover like the flights and the hotels. It's not that big of a deal. And at that point, we had been on 2 trips together, or no, we'd only been on 1 trip together to the south of France. And then Paris was going to be our second trip. The rest of the times, he had now visited me in Dallas 3 times. And so I told him, I said, I can pay for the flights and the hotels. It's not that big of a deal. He said, are you sure? I said, yeah, of course. He's like, I just don't know what I would do without you. Like, I just feel like I keep hitting these roadblocks and you are there to pick up the pieces every single time, and I'm so grateful for that. And I said, I'll always be there to support you. So now we can go back to landing in Paris. We meet at the airport, and he told me, he's like, letting you know I'm not in the best mood. I've been just like really upset. And I said, I am here to make you happy. So we land in Paris. We see each other. We're so happy. And we had the most spectacular trip in Paris. Like, we were just exploring. It's my first time there. And it was obviously I paid for a lot of that trip, and he paid for a little bit of the trip too. So we both kind of paid. And keep in mind, he still owes me $6,000 at this point. I am not concerned about the money. I don't know why I should have been concerned. I should have been noticing these red flags like, bro, like, where's my money? But again, this is someone that I am planning on marrying, and money at this point, like, money comes and goes, and I wasn't focused on that. I was just focused on us. So we finish our trip in Paris, say our goodbyes, and we start just, getting depressed as we always do when we say goodbye. And I board my flight to Dallas, and he asked me, what are your thoughts on us meeting with an immigration attorney just to get an idea of what the process entails? And I said, absolutely, I would love to do that. Obviously, I had Googled and looked into a few things, but nothing concrete. At the time, one of my best friends was working part-time for immigration attorneys. So I reached out to her. I said, hey, can I get her contact information? And she said, yeah, of course. She gives me her contact information. And I call her. We set up a meeting. And obviously, still the time difference. He had a work trip in Norway that he was at. And at this point, also, little side note, we had started sharing our locations while we were in Paris. So I had his location at this point. and I could see that he was in Norway. And he also FaceTimed me from the hotel room. So he was in Norway, 100%. And we had a call with the lawyer, and we were discussing the process. And she tells us it's going to take 18 months for you guys to get all of this process after the time you get married. And I was like, 18 months? She's like, everything is super backed up because of COVID. I always want to let my clients know this stuff so that they are fully prepared. And I just felt like that sounded like such a long time. But we finished the conversation with the lawyer, and I then call my ex, and we're talking, debriefing on everything. And there's two different types of ways to get permanent residency in the United States. There's consular processing, and then there's another way where you basically apply for the visa and you're living in the States full time while you're processing the visa. So obviously, because he was still working a lot and traveling a lot for work, and because of his dad's health, we decided we would do consular processing, because why not? But then we start having the discussions on, okay, but the clock starts after we get married. And that's when he says, well, I would marry you tomorrow. And I was like, well, I would marry you tomorrow. And he was like, wait, really? And now the time has come for me to drop the first of many bombs on you guys. This man is actually not my ex-fiance. He is my ex-husband. So I will end right now, and we will pick back up in part 8. Okay, Danish deception, part 7. So he tells me that he needs to get a back surgery, and the Danish deception, part 8. I was not going to leave you guys hanging, but I do have a wedding tonight, so this will be the final part of the evening. And just want to let you guys know, I need you to bear with me. I do have a job. I do have a life. I'm trying to do this at my own pace, but I also wanted to say thank you all for being here. This is not easy to share with the world, but your support truly means so much to me. All right, so yeah, we were not just engaged, we were married, and we are now divorced. So once we made the decision to get married, I remember we had a phone call over the course of like 6 hours. And one day we talked on the phone about all the things that we wanted to get out of life. We talked about kids, we talked about religion, we talked about everything. And at the end of that day, he told me, do you still want to get married? And I said, absolutely. I'm in love with you. I want to build a life with you. I want to have a family with you. So the decision was very, very simple. And so he already told me about a month prior that he had reached out to his realtor about putting out feelers about selling his home. Because at this point, now that we're getting married, he's like, I'm going to just try to spend as much time in Dallas as possible. And I was absolutely okay with that. And so in the beginning of January, he had told me that his realtor got an offer off market for his place. And I was like, that's great. And he was like, I'm going to probably take a loss. So, I mean, I'm just trying to get as much as my down payment back. And I was like, how much are you going to end up getting back? He said, probably around $500,000. I was like, well, that's, a good solid base for us to have. And I was more than okay with that. Keep in mind, he still does owe me money at this point. So they end up going under contract. The plan is for the house to sell by the end of January. And everything seemed like it was going smooth. And then one day he calls me and he tells me that he's had the worst day ever. And I'm like, oh, now what? He's like, there's no power. Like, no one has power. He's like, I just paid this guy $2,000 to bring generators to power up the whole entire apartment. I have an electrician coming, and he's like freaking out. And he basically used all of his money he had to put towards like the generators and paying the electrician for as much work as they could do. And I was like, okay, like what now? And he's like, I need help. At this point, he has now asked me for help. He said, can you send me $5,000? And I said, yeah, of course, I can help you. Again, love is a powerful drug. I hate myself. I hate this. I hate that I was so willing to help him, and it is what it is. But I sent him the $5,000. He tells me that his insurance is going to cover it. He's going to be able to pay me back. And also, like, I'm mindful of the fact that his house is supposed to close at the end of the month. And so a week go by, and we started talking about plans for the wedding. And so at first we wanted to go to Vegas, and then we looked into it, and Denmark does not recognize wedding marriages that are done in Vegas, because you can get the marriage certificate and get married in the same day. Same thing with Colorado. Shout out to Denmark. I love that rule. But we're like, it's fine. We should just save money. Let's just do it in Dallas, and then we can go do a little weekend trip to Broken Bow, Oklahoma, which is like this cute lake town, and that can be our honeymoon. And he was like, okay, that works fine. We can do that. At this point, he has his flight booked to come back to Dallas in the end of January. Now we're in 2023, and he tells me that one of his really close friends that owns a plumbing business, and my ex was actually godfather of this man's son. This is confirmed. And he came to him and said that his partner in his business is like doing some like shady stuff. He's like scared that he's gonna get like implicated. He wants my ex to buy out his partner, and he's asking him for a loan of $250,000. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of money. And this time he asked me, and you know, we're about to get married, so now I feel like I can insert my opinion about the situation. So I asked him, I'm like, is this just a handout, or is this going to be a good investment? And he was like, well, I think it's going to be a really good investment. Like, he has a bunch of ideas of how to expand the business. And to me, I was like, well, if you can help a friend and have a good investment, I think that makes a lot of sense. And as you guys can already tell, I'm a very giving person. I've been very giving my entire life. I get it from my parents. They're very generous and selfless. And so when it comes to helping friends and family in need, I've always done it. If I can do it, I'll always do it. And so to me, I'm like, we have this money coming in. Let's invest it. And, you know, I own this house here, and we don't have any big purchases coming up, so it's okay. Like, I wasn't really stressed and pressed about it. And so basically I was like, okay, the house is gonna close at the end of the month, and then he'll be able to like pay me back the money that he owes me, and he'll be able to help his friend, and everything will be good to go. So he ends up coming back to Dallas. We get our marriage certificate. We set our wedding date for February 10th. And I remember the night before our wedding, he got really, really bad food poisoning, which I feel like should have been another sign that this was 100% the wrong decision to make. But instead I was like, hey, in sickness and in health, like, whatever happens, we're going to make it through it. And at this point, he doesn't really have any money. I remember he looked at me, he goes, I'm sick, I'm broke. You want to marry me still? I said, I don't care if you're sick and broke. I love you for you. And we're getting married, and I'm so excited and ready for it. So the morning of our wedding, obviously he couldn't afford a ring at that point. And so I remember he got on one knee. I like woke up that morning, and he's down on one knee next to the bed. And he was like, I know this isn't the proposal you dreamed of, and I promise you I'm going to propose to you one day with a real ring, and we're going to share this with the world, but I want to ask you, will you marry me? And I said, absolutely, I'll marry you. And so we went to the courthouse. I remember I was wearing a dress from Fashion Nova because I didn't care. I was just excited to marry my person. And we got married. And I mean, I truly thought this was one of the best days of my life. I was so happy. I was grinning so big. I still have the pictures and the videos from this day. And we went to Broken Bow afterwards. And we just had a great weekend in a little cabin in the woods. And it's just this cute lake town. So it's perfect. And we brought Smokey. I remember we got burgers. Lasagna. We just stayed in and hiked, and it was a really, really wonderful honeymoon. After the wedding, he stayed in Dallas for about a week, and then he goes back to Denmark, and he had said that the house had closed and he was just waiting for the funds. Sometimes there's a little bit of a delay in Denmark. Again, I have no idea how this stuff works, and so while he's in Denmark, he says the funds came through. He transferred the money to his friend for the investment in the plumbing business. And he said that he was about to set up a transfer for me for the money he owed me, which was about $10,000 at that point. And so a couple weeks go by, I still haven't received the money. I'm not super pressed about it because I still am like fully trusting him at this point. And he ends up booking his flight to come back to visit in March. And this trip was a trip that my dad and my mom were coming back to Dallas to come visit. And he already planned to ask my dad for my hand in marriage. And so he's about to come visit, and he calls me maybe like a couple of days before he's about to come to Dallas, and he said, I received the worst possible news today, and I will continue on in part 9. Hope you guys have a great night. The Danish deception, part 9. Okay, so he calls me and he tells me that he's had the worst news that he possibly could have. The IRS has told him that he owes $318,000 in taxes. In addition to that, his dad owes $12 million in taxes. And at this point, I did not have a lot of information about his family money because I've always been the type of person, like, if your parents have money, that means your parents have money. That does not mean you have money. So I didn't even ask details about his parents' finances, but obviously I'm like, if his parents owe $12 million in taxes, they got money. And he said that the person that was doing his taxes for years and years and also doing his dad's taxes was one of his childhood friends that owns an accounting firm. And he's like, we've been paying a lot of money in taxes over the years, so someone must be committing some sort of fraud at this point. And so I'm obviously freaking out. This is a lot of money that he owes. So I said, you know what, I'm going to use the rest of the proceeds from selling my home. And in addition to that, he told me at this point he owns 3 different watches. He owns 2 Rolexes and a Patek watch, which if you're not a watch person, these are very expensive watches. And so a couple hours go by. He's like, I sold my Patek watch, and like he said, he sold it at a loss. He just needed to get the money. He said he's short about $30K, and so he tells me that he's gonna reach out to his parents, and his parents are like, we don't care. Like, this is not our problem. This is your problem. Figure it out. And he starts to just like, continue spiraling. And so he tells me he's going to reach out to 2 of his childhood friends, one of which he was with this friend whenever we met in Croatia. So I knew they'd been friends for a while, and then another childhood friend. And he told me, I've helped out these friends so much in the past, and it's almost like he was communicating to me that he was owed this money from them. I've never asked friends for money before, so this is like not anything that I'm comfortable with, but I was like, hey, if you feel comfortable doing this, go for it. I had not offered him a cent. So he comes back, says he's going to get $10,000 from one friend and then $5,000 from another friend. And I was like, that's so nice of them. He's like, I've honestly helped them so much in the past that like, I'm grateful that they're helping me when I'm in need. And so at this point, he's short $15,000. And so he just comes right out and asks me, like, can I borrow it? And I did not say yes right away. I said, listen, I have to pay my taxes too, because I was working at an accounting firm. Obviously, that's W-2 income, but I was also doing real estate. I did very well the year before, so I owed a pretty penny in taxes. And it's March of 2023, so my taxes are coming up pretty soon. And so I told him, I'm like, I'm not comfortable giving this money because, like, I have to pay taxes too. And now my savings is like really starting to I'm starting to feel like the financial impact, and it's starting to stress me out. And he said, I hired a law firm. They've already looked into my tax records. They've already found indicators of fraud. I think I'm going to be able to get this turned around really quickly. And my biggest worry and concern is that if I don't pay this tax bill, it's going to affect my chances of getting a green card. And that's when I start to panic. And now I realize that I was just in a very toxic cycle of emotional manipulation. But after some time, talks me into loaning him the $15,000. And I remember I only could send him like $3K at a time. And so I remember it was like over like the course of 5 days. And like every day he'd be like, hey, don't forget to send the payment. And everything about this felt so wrong in my soul, but I did it anyways. And this was not something that I kept quiet about. Like, I told my parents, I told my siblings, like, my ex got this crazy tax bill, and, they were all aware that we were going through this like financial hiccup, and I didn't like want to be presented as these people with money. So I was very upfront and honest about it. And like, you can ask a lot of my friends, like I told a lot of my close people about this situation. And quick side note, I did not tell them that I was loaning him money. I just told them that he owed a lot of money, and I told them about the overall situation. But at this point, no one knows that I have given him any money. So I ended up giving him the money. He's so grateful. He's like, thank you so much for helping me out. And so about like 5 days later, he flew to Dallas to come and visit. And my parents came to visit maybe a couple days after he came. And at this point, he's staying in the living room, not in the bed with me, but he could not go to a hotel because we're like trying to be mindful with spending. So my parents definitely started to bond with my ex a lot more over this trip. Like, I remember my dad brought him this Nigerian Igbo cane that my ex had been admiring, that my dad had one. He surprised him, brought him one from Nigeria. And he actually took my dad out and asked him for my hand in marriage, even though we were already married. And my dad said yes. And my dad also one of my childhood friends' wedding, and I had paid for the portion of the wedding already because I had been planning on going by myself. And then obviously I got into a relationship, so I just had to pay like a little extra to add someone to the reservation. But we decided to go a couple days early and celebrate like our honeymoon. And so basically our flight comes and he's staying in the living room. My parents are sleeping in the guest bedroom. And I wake up and I get a text from him and he says, "Hey, can you come downstairs real quick?" And I said, "Of course." So I go downstairs. I'm like, "What's up?" He said, one of my friends, the friend that he had received $5K from for the tax bill, reached out to me and said he's freaking out because his wife really wants to buy this house and he's short a certain amount of money to purchase this home. And obviously he was like, "I feel so bad because he loaned it to me because he was trying to help me out." And my biggest strength and weakness is empathy. And when I saw him hurting because his friend was not able to do something because of the money he had loaned my ex, and at this point I felt like the friend had loaned us the money. It wasn't like he loaned my ex the money because we were married. And so I do something so stupid and idiotic. I end up loaning him an additional $3K, not even a week after I had already given him $15K. So I actually ended up giving him $18,000 in the month of March of 2023. Yes, I'm sick to my stomach. So I can send him the money. We end up going to the airport, fly to Cabo. We have an amazing trip. And at this point, I had just hard launched him on my Instagram Valentine's Day prior. So at this point, I hard launched him after we were already married. And we were in Cabo, and I'm like posting more photos of him on my social media. And I'm going through my Instagram story views and I'm looking at the names and I'm seeing all of these Danish names. And I can tell they're Danish names because there's a different Danish alphabet. And so I'm clicking some of the profiles, and a lot of them you can see like my ex is like the mutual, like follows them. And so I brought it up to him like, "Hey, all these Danish people are watching my story, but I thought it was weird that no one was like following me." I'm like, "These are your friends." Like, and I wanted him to maintain the same friendships in Denmark, even though he was moving to the States, because I never want to be the type of person that takes a man away from like his friends and family. And so I remember I'm clicking profiles and I click a girl's profile and I look at the first picture and I see my ex's dog. And that's something that I actually haven't mentioned. My ex did have a dog, and every time he came to visit, he had a friend that was watching the dog. And whenever he sold his place and decided that he was going to spend more time in Dallas, his dog ended up getting adopted by some people because he's like, "I just am not home enough." And at first I told him like, "Bring the dog to Dallas." Like I wanted the dog to come. He's like, "No, it's fine. Like that does not make sense to do." And I supported his decision. And he told me that the ex could not take the dog because she was in med school and was constantly out of the home, and she just did not have the capacity to take care of the dog. But I see his dog, and it's like a duck-toller retriever. I think that duck-tolling retriever. I think that's how you say it. I saw his dog as a puppy on this girl's profile, and I clicked the tag, and my ex is tagged. And I look at him, I go, "Is this your ex-girlfriend?" He was like, "Oh yeah, it is." I was like, "Oh, so she's watching my stories." He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay, that's a little weird." And I remember checking like throughout the course of like every day for like a week, and like all these Danish people are watching my story every day. And I'm like, "Don't you think this is weird that there's like 15 Danish people watching my story every day?" And he was like, "Honestly, I just feel like they're a little bit salty that I like moved on. I'm moving to America. Like I think they might be a little salty." And he said, "You should just block them all. Like I'm not gonna lie, this is like a very toxic group of people." And so I was like, "Is that what you want me to do?" He said, "Yeah, just block them all. Like they're not here for the right reasons. They're just looking to like creep, and they're probably just talking about it." So I said, "Okay." And I decided to block them all. And so basically we come back from Cabo, he stays for about a month, and then he goes back to, and at this point he had come to visit me so many times and decided, now's my time to go spend time with him in Europe. And with his dad's health and his work, it made sense for me to just, go out of my way to try to spend time with him, and I could work remote at the time. And so I board a flight and I head to Denmark for the first time, and I land in Denmark, and I will continue on in part 10. The Danish Deception, part 10. So I land in Denmark after a couple of layovers, and my ex is waiting after baggage claim. He's waving a Danish flag, and I'm just so excited to be in Denmark for the first time. And so we land, we go to one of his friends' homes because we're staying there for the night. We change, and we go directly to an Easter lunch with him and all of his childhood friends. So I walk in, and everyone is just so nice. And it's his childhood friends and like their wives and girlfriends. And everyone was just super kind to me. We were drinking, having fun. After a while, I was super jet lagged. So we ended up going back to his friend's house. That's where we stayed that night. And the following day, he gives me the hometown tour. So he shows me where he got baptized. He shows me his elementary school, and we're just exploring. And I just feel so grateful to like see his roots, see where he grew up. And after the day of exploring, we go to his parents' house. And this is my first time meeting his parents. And I am so nervous. I've always done really well with parents, but this is, different situation because number one, there's not a whole lot of Black people in Denmark. So they're not used to meeting people that look like me. Also, this man has been very clear that he's moving to America. So you can only imagine how a mother might feel about the woman that's moving her son 5,000 miles away. So I was really nervous, but I'm not even kidding. The second I walked in, me and his mom instantly connected. And I think we bonded over our mutual love for my ex. And so it was his parents and his sister and her boyfriend that she had just recently started dating. We're all at this dinner. She cooked a very traditional Danish meal. It's called flæskesteg. I remember I had seconds, I had thirds. I think that made her fall in love with me even more because what mother doesn't want a girl that's going to eat their food? And so I brought her like a bunch of gifts, her and his father. I brought them gifts from Dallas, and we just really bonded that first day. She brought out all these photo albums and was showing me like my ex's childhood photos, and it was a really special night. And I remember my ex kept being like, are you sure you're okay with staying here? Because one thing I will say is they lived in a very humble home. And listen, I know there's billionaires out there that drive Honda Civics, so I don't judge. I'm never the type of person being like, why are you guys staying in this small house? Spend your money the way you want to spend your money. So I didn't think anything of it. But I was a little bit surprised. And also Denmark is not the type of place that has all these like big houses. Like a lot of the homes are small regardless of if you have money. But again, didn't think anything of it. So we have a great dinner. The following day, we start going and having these like day trips all over Denmark and going to explore. And it's always me, my ex, and his parents. And one day we went to this area called Skagen, which is the most northern part of Denmark. And it's really beautiful. And it was just fun to go and explore. And we're driving home, and my ex starts yelling at his dad. His dad is yelling back. They just start going at. Obviously, they're speaking Danish. I have no clue what they're saying. My ex pulls over. He gets out of the car, storms out, starts like walking away. I get out of the car. I chase after him. I'm like, what's happening? What's happening? And he was like, my dad basically just said that he's over today. He just wants to go back and watch his game. And I was like, and he basically said he was really upset because he felt like his dad wasn't making an effort to get to know me. And that's when I realized that him and his dad had a really toxic relationship. And I also noticed that like they basically exchanged like 1 to 2 sentences a day. I also noticed that he wasn't as close with his sister, his little sister, because I mean, they would talk all the time. And so I thought that was a little strange too. But I don't know, I'm still trying to really understand this family dynamic. But what I do know is that he's a mama's boy. He's close with his mom, which, that was really important to me. There were a few things that I took away from this trip. The first being that he is a little bit embarrassed of his family's home. He kept saying, do you want to go stay in a hotel or Airbnb? Do you want to stay here? And I'm like, why would we not stay here? Like, if I went to go visit my parents and I wanted to stay in an Airbnb, they'd be devastated. I was like, of course we're staying here. And he was like, I know it's not like nice. It's a super old house. You haven't renovated it. Like, I don't understand. They have all this money. Like, why don't they do it? I'm like, it's fine. Like, don't worry. We'll be okay. Another thing I noticed was that I did not meet the older sister. No one spoke of her. And I knew at this point she had one kid at this point. So they talked about her a little bit, but it was kind of like the elephant in the room. Like, no one really talked about it. And, I know they don't have a relationship. They can't be with each other in intimate settings. But overall, like, I did have this city exceeded my expectations. It's a beautiful, beautiful city. And we ended up staying in a hotel, like a cheaper hotel by the water, and I can stay anywhere. I'm good. I don't need to stay anywhere bougie. And I remember him being like, I hate that we have to stay here. Like, it's not nice. I'm like, I don't care. Like, we have a bed, we have a place to stay. It's okay. And so we spent that whole week just exploring Copenhagen, and then we get ready to travel to Nigeria for my grandmother's burial. And so at this point, we're staying in this hotel, and I remember there was like a laundromat at this hotel, so I was doing laundry, and he said, I'm gonna go and get a few things for my storage unit, because he's moved out of his place at this point. He has a storage unit. And so he comes back home, and he has like this Rolex box, and he's like, oh, this is one of my Rolexes. I want to show it to you. And at this point, I had already seen his steel, what's it called? The Batman. I already had seen that watch. He had brought it out for Cabo. So I've seen one of his watches. The Patek he sold, I never saw it. So now this is the second watch he's bringing out. And he opens it. And it's, again, I did not know anything about watches before this, but now I know it's a day-date presidential watch with a green face. So he ends up telling me this is like a $50,000 watch. I was like, this is nice. And keep in mind, we're about to leave for Nigeria in like a day. I'm like, why'd you bring it out? And he's like, oh, I'm going to bring it to Nigeria. I go, you're going to do what? And he's like, I'm bringing it to Nigeria. I'm like, you cannot bring a $50,000 watch to Nigeria. And he's like, yeah, I can. And I'm like, this does not make sense. And he said, no, like, this is a special occasion. Like, I want to bring it out for this. And so I told him, okay, I feel very uncomfortable, especially like us being in the village and you're wearing this like expensive watch. You're just asking yourself to get robbed. I just did not understand it, but whatever. He ends up packing the watch. We get ready and we hop on a flight to go to Nigeria and meet my family for my grandmother's burial. Keep in mind, he had paid for all the hotels, everything in Denmark, and he paid for all the hotels and flights for Nigeria. And so we hop on a plane, go to Nigeria. I'm super nervous because I just don't know what to expect and how he's going to react. But we go, we meet up with my family, and he does so well. And it was funny because everyone wanted to take photos with him, and he was meeting my extended family, like my grandmother. I never thought I would bring a man home to meet my grandmother. I felt like I fell deeper in love with him, watching him just immerse himself in my culture and be there for my family while we put my grandmother to rest. And it was just a really amazing, beautiful trip. Honestly, there was nothing crazy that happened. And he tells me while we're in Nigeria that the law firm has settled the issue with his taxes and they're filing a document for the accounting firm to pay out a settlement, and it'll be paid out soon, and then he'll be able to transfer me the money. And so I'm like, oh, I'm breathing deeply, and it's awkward because I want to bring it up to him, everything, so I feel like I don't want to put too much pressure on him, even though I should have. So we come back to Denmark, and at this point, we are trying to separately and ask her husband if the story that was communicated to me by my ex was true. So I asked her, and she responds to me and says, no, this is not correct. And at this point, it's the husband that's communicating. And for the purposes of this playlist and series, I'm going to refer to these individuals as Crypto and Crypto's wife. So Crypto is the one that's responding, and he's saying, no, none of this is true. He told me he had the watches sold a long time ago. He told me he was going to transfer the money. I've been asking him, he's been giving me the turnaround time. And, when his dad was in the hospital, I was trying to be respectful, but also this is affecting my work because he works very much in crypto. And so I'm reading these messages and I'm still reading it, and I get to the end and he said, and just so you know, I had someone look into the wallet that I sent money to, and it's been linked to a gambling website since 2023. And that's when I realized that he was gambling. And in that moment, I just fully collapsed to the ground. I remember I was in the kitchen and it was like I couldn't even stand anymore. Like I just collapsed to the ground and I'm just like crying. And he's like, what is it? I'm like, you're lying to me. You're lying to me. You're gambling. And he was like, no, I'm not. Like still lying. And I'm just like, just tell me the truth. Be honest with me. For once in your life, tell me the truth. And he's like, I promise you I'm not gambling. And then I grab his face and I pull it to me and I scream in his face. I said, tell me the fucking truth. And he looks at me and he goes, okay, I've been gambling. And honestly, I was just quiet. Like it was just 30 seconds of just silence. And this next part is gonna exact moment. So I went upstairs, I changed, and I grabbed my keys and I left the house and I went and showed a house. And it was the most bizarre thing ever. Like I was in front of clients smiling, even though like everything around me felt like it was crumbling. So he's obviously texted me like, please like come home after your showing. Like I want to have a conversation. And I'm saying right now, I just completely lose it. And like Natalie's my best friend. I love her so much. And just being able to like have someone finally to like be open and honest about what was happening made me feel so good. Because I felt like I could just release everything. And she was 100% there for me. She lives in New York, but she was like, whatever happens, I don't give a fuck about him. I give a fuck about you. So where do we go from here? And I was like, I don't know where we go. Like, I'm with this man that I love more than anything in the world. I find out he's been lying to me. I find out that he's stolen money from our friends, and I'm just like completely wrecked. I'm like, I don't know where to go from here. And she's like, something you need to know is that this is the rest of your life. This is it. This isn't something that just goes away. This is addiction. And she had experience with a gambling addiction specifically and has seen the damage it's caused. And so she said, this is the rest of your life. Whatever you decide, I will support you, but this will be the rest of your life. And so after that, I go inside the house and he's like, I want to talk. And I'm like, I like still was not ready to talk to him. But I decided to call Crypto's wife, who's my good friend. And I talked to her on the phone, and the first thing I said, I just started bawling my eyes out. I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I felt so much guilt, like, that I didn't know that all this stuff was happening, and I had no idea. And I just told her, I'm so sorry. And let me just take a moment and tell you, I don't know if Crypto and Crypto's wife are going to come forward. Like, money comes and goes. Obviously, we'll figure that out later, but we do to support you. And I just was like, I don't know how to be with someone that lies to me and that I don't trust. Like, I don't know what to do. But, you know, at the same time, like, I got married. We said our vows and we said in sickness and in health. And this is a sickness. And I have no experience with addiction at all. None, zero. Like, I don't even know where to begin. And so I just start doing research and like looking at like podcasts and reading books. And at this point, I'm still very much distancing myself from him. And then I look up a Gamblers Anonymous meeting and I find one here in Dallas, and it was an open meeting happening. And I told him, I said, you know, it's still really hard for me to like talk with you, but let's go to this GA meeting. And so we go to the GA meeting, everyone's like going around circle, telling their stories. I'm just bawling my eyes out during this whole entire thing because I'm hearing like the saddest stories and I'm hearing like the most beautiful success stories. And so in a way, it like made me understand the depth of what I was going through, but it also gave me hope. And so I, for some reason, still felt like there was like a lot that I didn't know about him. Like there was stuff missing in my gut, in my soul. And I kept asking him, is there anything else you need to tell me? Is there anything else you need to tell me? He said no. At this point, I am still in constant communication with Crypto and Crypto's wife. And Crypto tells me, I was wondering, how would you feel about me hiring a PI to look into his past? And I said, 100%, please do it. And we will continue on in part 15.
You guys, it's a lot. Wow.
The Danish Deception, Part 15. So before I dive back into the series, there's a few things I wanted to say. The first being that I am giving you guys majority of bad, and there was a lot of good times in our relationship. I would say I was happy 90% of the time, despite the financial struggles that we're going through. And we were with my sister and some of my friends and my ex, and he was actually the only guy on this trip, which was 100% unintentional. And we're on our way to Panama, and while we're in the air, obviously my phone's on airplane mode, and we land, and I take the airplane mode off, and I look at my phone, and I have all these calls from his sister and his sister's boyfriend. And so I'm a little bit confused. I open up the messages and I see that she's saying, you need to call me immediately. Immediately I was like, oh, something bad's happened. And so I look at my ex, I show him the messages, and obviously he has similar messages as well on his phone when he turns it on. And so he was like, there's nothing we can do. We're sitting in a plane. Let's just get off the plane and then I'll call her. So we get off the plane and we just kind of step aside. He calls her and he's like, okay. And he's talking in Danish. So I don't really understand what's going on. And then he gets off the phone. I was like, what happened? He was like, oh, his heart stopped and they weren't able to resuscitate him. And I was like, what? And I was like, your dad died? And it was the most like uncomfortable position for me because he did not show any emotion at all. And I was like, are you okay? And I just remember just holding his hand. I was like, what can we do? What can I do for you? He's like, honestly, let's just go through customs and let's get to the hotel and then we'll figure it out there. And it was the most bizarre situation ever because it's like his dad's death did not faze him at all. And I am someone that's very, very close to my dad. And so I put myself in his shoes and I'm like, I'd be wailing on the floor, screaming at the top of my lungs. And so, I know everyone deals with grief differently. I just wanted to support him in any way I could. So we go to the hotel and his mom calls him and we're on FaceTime and she's just bawling her eyes out. And I saw one tear come from his eye. And that's when I realized it felt like he was more sad that his mom was sad than he was and that his dad died again. This is me just making assumptions. I don't know for a fact that was what he was feeling, but I did feel a little bit strange. And at this point, I'm looking at flights to go back to Dallas so that we can get on a plane to go to Aalborg, Denmark to be there for his family. And so I'm looking at flights and he's talking to his mom on the phone. He gets off the phone and he was like, we're actually going to stay. I go, we're going to stay. He's like, it's your 30th birthday. I just talked to my mom. She does not want us to leave. The funeral's not going to be for a week. So we're just going to enjoy our time here. And then we're going to go back home. And I'm like, this is so weird. How am I supposed to celebrate my birthday when my father-in-law just passed away? It just felt so wrong. And I just remember we tried our best to have a good time on the trip, but it was just we were sad every day. And there was one night that my ex got really bad food poisoning. We had to get a doctor into the room to give him an IV. It just felt like everything was going wrong. And so I am not gonna lie, I need to go back to Panama and experience it again because that trip was not it. And I wanted to make something very clear. He paid for everything for that trip to Panama. So flight, hotel, and all the meals for everyone, including me and the girls that were on the trip. So we go back to Dallas for one day and then we head to Denmark, and it was so nice being there for his family. It was so emotional, and seeing his mom cry, just be so sad, it broke my heart. Again, I'm not sensing a whole lot of emotion from my ex, but like I said before, everyone processes their grief in different ways. But we go to the funeral and